Okay, so recently there's been some drama in the game development world where Unity is charging people for installs, charging these huge corporations and gaming companies for their actual engine, software, whatever you want to call it, and people are freaking out. So let's react to what is going on. I'm vaguely familiar with what is happening, but not really. So let's watch this video and hopefully it explains it for me.
For nearly a decade now, there's been an ongoing war in game dev, not between Unity and Unreal Engine, but between Unity and its developers. It's always seemed like Unity and the developers who use it have had a tumultuous relationship, where, if I'm honest, I don't know a single Unity dev that actually enjoys Unity. And it seems like the Unity devs have gotten increasingly frustrated with Unity as a company and a provider of software and game engines. But Unity is not one to be topped, and they decided to one-up their community by showing that they hate them even more. I cannot actually believe that these pricing changes were put out the way they were. What the hell am I talking about? Previously, developers would pay for the number of seats they needed, which is the number of developers working on Unity at their company, and would pay a flat license fee, sometimes pay a percentage of their sales, usually not though. That was it. You'd pay Unity their fees and you'd get back to work. They've decided they want to change that model though, and not in a way where if you use an old version, you can keep using the old license. They're hard switching over at the beginning of 2024 to a model where you're now charged a flat fee for every installation of a game using Unity. That's not every purchase of a game.
Who cares? Who cares? So the gaming companies are making millions and millions and millions of dollars by using Unity. So these gaming companies are upping their prices, $20. Now games that used to cost $50 now cost like $79.99. They're charging premium editions, extra editions, super editions. They're literally price gouging the gamer. So the moment it happens to them, now they're like, oh, that's price gouging. Oh, no, they're getting a taste of their own medicine, and I love it. I love it. They deserve it. Increase the price even more to show these idiot companies what it's like to be milked dry.
Using Unity. That's not every time a user starts playing a game based in Unity. That's every time someone hits install. So if I go to Game Pass and I download all of the Unity-based games in it, every time I do that, the developer of that game might be paying a fee as high as 20 cents for every install.
Good. Charge the developing companies, charge the gaming companies, and let them learn their lesson.
That's insane, especially when you consider how many...
Oh my god, 20 cents. Oh, they're getting charged 20 cents. Meanwhile, the gamer's getting charged $80 for a game that doesn't even cost $10 to make.
Free-to-play games are being made in Unity. We don't even know if a pirate...
Like, they're literally charging $80 for a game made on an engine that is practically free.
Pirated copy of a game is going to count against this or not, because Unity has had zero transparency in how they're actually tracking these things. So I could theoretically...
Now, I don't know what it is about YouTubers, but they're all rocking the same sort of haircut, the same mustache. This is like your generic NPC YouTuber.
Theoretically, go pirate a game, uninstall and reinstall it a whole bunch, and put a company out of business if I figure out how to do that programmatically. Or, God forbid, I find the weird endpoint that they're hitting to trigger these installs. It's theoretically possible to cost companies hundreds of thousands of dollars for no good reason. And it's rare that I come out this hard against a company making changes. I tried to understand what they're going for here. I really did. And while I do think there's a bit more FUD than necessary here, there are people who seem to think this will immediately put every Unity studio out of business. It does affect a lot of them, and in ways that I didn't expect until I looked into the numbers. To show just how bad things can be here, I'm pulling an example straight from the Unity website. This is an imaginary game that made $2 million in the last 12 months and has 5 million lifetime installs. Since they broke the $1 million in revenue, like minimum for this to trigger, and the 1 million lifetime install threshold in Unity Pro, they're now going to be billed for the prior month installs, which is in this case theoretically 200,000 installs and 100,000 installs in different markets, because they want to price it differently based on which markets the installs happen in. So that's $23.5 $100,000 for that 1 month of installs. So this is a
So that's absolutely insane. Obviously, charging people for multiple installs is just ludicrous. I mean, it's really no burden for the developers. I mean, it's just memory. You're putting storage on your own system. It's just literally copy and paste. It costs Unity nothing to copy and paste their software onto your computer. So the fact that they're charging for this is just utterly insane.
It's a company that's theoretically making $2 million per year in revenue. 23.5 times 12, that's 282,000 out of their 2 million in revenue. So 282 divided by 2,000, that's 14% of their revenue. 14%.
So 14%. Now, at the same time, I'm like, oh, holy crap, these gaming companies are finally getting a taste of their own medicine. But at the same time, I'm like, that's ridiculous. 14% of your profits, that's just utterly insane. So I'm pretty conflicted on this.
Are you kidding? That's 14% of their revenue on top of the fees they're already paying to the different services they're selling their game through. So if you're selling your game on Steam, for example, you're already paying 30% to them. That's insane. It's rough. And I can't believe...
How come nobody's mad at Steam? Everybody loves Steam. Oh, Steam is so good. It's so useful. But they're taking 30% of the game developers' profits, which is just abysmal. It's probably worse than what Unity is doing. But nobody complains about Steam because Steam is trendy. Steam is awesome. Steam is from the developers of Half-Life 2. No, Steam is just as greedy, just as unethical as freaking Unity.
Believe they actually did this. It gets even worse when you think about free-to-play games in things that are like mobile heavy, where people regularly upgrade their phones or uninstall and reinstall games to save space. Now a game like Genshin Impact probably owes a lot of money to Unity once these changes go through. It really does feel penny pinching. There are pricing changes that are made to make things more transparent that might be more expensive. I've certainly seen outrage around pricing that didn't necessarily make sense. I think this change is something worth being outraged about. If Unity was the best engine ever, this would be a slightly different conversation, but there's a lot of devs who don't want to be using Unity. They're using it because it's what they're on and it's what their teams are familiar with. There's now more incentive than ever to throw it in the trash. Like, imagine if AWS started charging a fee for every unique user that goes to your website, separate from all the other fees AWS charges. That would be absurd. That would be insane. Now imagine Azure did that instead. We would laugh at them. We would just laugh in their face because it is stupid. But when Unity does it, people are a little too willing to go at them. Where are people going to go? If we want to talk about doing things that help game devs, we can't do it without talking about Epic. They've pushed so hard to improve conditions and revenue for game developers. The big thing they did, which I know isn't popular with the gamers, so hear me out, guys. Epic Game Store is a massive win for game developers. Epic did a bunch of cool things to really innovate around the model, not just for big AAA studios, but for indie game devs, going as far as fronting thousands of sales in revenue to game developers ahead of release, so they had the money they needed to finish their games. And God forbid they didn't sell enough copies to cover the front, Epic would just eat it as part of the contract.
So that is pretty awesome of Epic Games to just give their developers hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of money so they actually make a quality game. That is just totally awesome. Unity, not so much. I don't think they do anything for their developers. There's literally no reason why developers should be even using Unity, because Unity offers nothing, literally nothing. I mean, I was trained to use Unity in college, and I just hated it. It's one of the most clunky, nonsensical programs that I've ever freaking used, and it's just outdated. It just sucks. And why are developers? If it's hard for me to do simple tasks on Unity, then I can only imagine what it's like for game developers trying to make a game on Unity. So I don't know why people aren't using the Unreal Engine. I literally have no idea. It's way superior, it's way better, but for some reason people are still using old, outdated programs like Unity.
who were explicitly looking to make sure game developers could get through the hardest part, which is finishing the game and getting it published. But this isn't the biggest thing Epic Game Store does. The big thing is their 12% revenue share versus Steam's 30%. That is a massive, massive difference. So if I'm giving 30% to Steam, 40% to my publisher, I'm left with 30%. Once a game goes on sale, that becomes like cents per sale. If you were to add Unity's huge fee on top, that becomes insane. Unreal Engine has a 3% fee on the cost of the game and a license fee to get started, and that's it. And if you sell your game...
So guess where the cost is going to be passed down to? You guessed it, the gamer. So once these Unity games start getting way more expensive, out of nowhere, just blame Unity, blame all these middlemen, which are just adding on fees, just tacking on insane fees onto their freaking games.
Game in Epic Game Store, they waive the 3% fee, making it an effective 9% rev cut compared to, again, Steam's 30%. That is a massive win. That can double or more the profits for a lot of studios. And the reason Epic did this is they feel like game studios are getting shafted. And in order for Epic to be successful making game engines, they need game developers to be successful too, and have more money, have more resources, and make more great games. And it really feels like Epic and Tim Sweeney have put their money where their mouth is here and done a lot of things to help game developers be more successful. Going as far as literally killing Fortnite on iOS, a multi-billion-dollar a year cash cow, in order to warm the courts up to the idea of alternative app stores on mobile, specifically so different payment processors could be used and not pay Apple a 30% fee. One of the quotes from that court hearing that has stuck with me since was the crazy realization that multi-billion-dollar companies like Bank of America and Chase are paying almost nothing to be on the App Store. They pay the $100 a year fee for their developers, and that's it.
So if freaking banks that make millions and millions of dollars worth of money a year don't have to pay that much, but they expect the freaking game developers to pay a crap ton of money just to put their freaking game on the app, and the profit margins are already slim for indie developers. So yeah, that's just absurd. That's exploitation, and it's not about paying your fair share on these platforms. It's more about milking the little guy dry. The big companies, the big corporations probably don't have to pay that much either.
Versus a small indie game that might make $200K a year in revenue, paying 30% of their revenue to Apple. Indie game developers and small devs selling software on iOS are the ones subsidizing giant companies like Amazon and...
Yep, so the poor subsidize the rich. It's always been this way since the dawn of time. The poor literally subsidize the rich, and the rich obviously get richer. So it's an unfair system, it's an unfair market, it's an unfair platform to be on. Nobody should be on these platforms. If a rich company like freaking PayPal, like PNC, like Bank of America can just get a free ride, while meanwhile you have to pay all these extra sort of fees, you have to pay these middlemen, you have to pay out your wazoo for basic things that are already small in profit margins, and you're basically getting screwed.
In Bank of America and their app review process and release cycles, that's actually insane. And that realization of, wow, this model kind of screws over the people who are trying to make innovative things on the platform and greatly benefits these massive companies was sad to see. And Epic is one of few companies that's really challenging it. It feels like they're firing on all cylinders to try and help developers be more successful, especially in the gaming space. And I am certain they're going to take the massive opportunity that was handed to them here. That said, Unreal is far from the easiest engine to get started in. It's pretty rough for things like 2D games because it's very much built to be a powerful 3D, highly everything game engine. But thankfully there are other options too for the smaller 1 to 3 person studios. Godot is killing it. I am curious what Godot's new pricing looks like. Godot's growing on me because Godot is open source and it's phenomenal software. I'll admit
that's what they need to be making. They should be making an open source video game engine, video game developer engine, and they should be teaming up with other indie companies to make this. Why are they relying so much on Unity? Why are they relying so much on all these other programs instead of just banding together and making their own and starting what's it called?
I am curious what Godot's new pricing looks like. Godot's growing on me because Godot is open source and it's phenomenal.
That's the word, open source. We need more open source programs. We need a completely open source internet. Nobody should have ownership of any sort of monopoly within the internet. Video sharing should be open source. Everything should be open source on the internet. And when it comes to gaming especially, because if you don't, then one freaking company like Unity can basically roadblock the entire video game industry and add on all these nonsensical, idiotic, greedy fees.
Phenomenal software. I'll admit I was very skeptical at first, mostly because the games I was playing from Godot weren't that great. I didn't see too many of them. But one of my favorite games recently was built in Godot. Cassette Beasts. So Cassette Beasts is a Pokemon-like that is actually really fun. The world design, the graphics, the music, everything is way better than I would have expected. I think I was over 30 hours in before I realized this was a Godot game. My previous bias has been entirely erased. It is obvious to me now that you can make incredible software using Godot. I think it's worth going in on that. There's one other piece I need to talk about here that might also be our saving grace. As I mentioned before, Epic and Apple don't get along due to the pricing scuffle and Epic putting in their own model for payments in Fortnite and getting banned from the App Store. Because of that, when Apple wanted to do proper 3D interactive experiences for their new virtual headset, they partnered with...
So let's read this tweet. It says the Unity debacle means Apple Vision Pro is 100% F and dead on arrival. Apple can't partner with Unreal. Lawsuit. No one is starting a new Unity project, so no spatial 3D apps. No apps to use, no reason to buy a Apple Vision Pro. No market to build apps for. Death spiral. So basically it's saying it's a chain reaction from all this greed. So these companies got way too greedy and they created some sort of death spiral of just nothing getting done.
Unity. Even in the slide where they did that partnership, it was really awkward, like they had cut out another company from it, because I think the Epic beef caused them to be cut from this. As a result, Apple and Unity partnered very, very close, and now Unity is screwing over developers.
So Apple and Unity partnering is insane. I don't know why anybody would work with Unity or Apple, because they're just middlemen. You're making the game, you're making the app, you do all the work, and all they do is copy and paste your software into their freaking platform and then charge you a bunch of money, and they can raise the fees at any time.
Apple has to be very careful about their sentiment with devs because it's always up and down. They're in danger here. This is a huge risk. And I honestly think one of the most likely outcomes here is Apple putting their foot down and saying, no, Unity, you're our partner. You're going to fix this or we're out. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, Apple's going to hop in here and get Unity to unscrew themselves. They might even end up acquiring them. Who knows? We'll see in the near future. Regardless, I don't think Apple's going to let this fly. We've already seen some clawback from Unity. In particular, they said they're not going to charge developers using things like Game Pass. Just a nice change, but it's nowhere near enough. Anything beyond a full mass.
So the gaming industry is one of the most greediest industries that there is, unfortunately, because it's such a huge moneymaker. It's probably more profitable than social media. It's more profitable than anything within the tech space because you can make money off of just entertainment, and it's been around for a long time, so it's not really going anywhere. So it's one of the most profitable spaces within the tech industry. So a lot of people have their hands in the pot. They're trying to get as many pieces of the pie as they can, and it's leading towards things like this. Oh, I'm getting away with this for so long, so I'm going to increase the fee and I'll probably get away with it. Well, this time they got caught. This time they created mass outrage within the gaming development community and the fans of those gaming developers, and it's created a chain reaction where they will probably lose out on a bunch of money.